The first Easter egg hunt I can remember participating in as a child was not my finest moment. Our kindergarten class had been instructed to come to school with 6 dyed eggs, which would be hidden in the park next door to our school by mother volunteers, since few mothers had joined the workforce at that time. While I had practiced hiding and finding eggs with my siblings before then, this promised to be an egg hunt on a whole other level, with many more hiding places and many more eggs to find. But the best part was that there would be a prize egg, an egg which had been wrapped in aluminum foil so that it was silver and shiny, and whoever found that egg would be awarded an enormous basket filled with all sorts of Easter treats. I seem to have been born with an overly competitive streak. So that I turn almost anything into a competition. My congregations have noticed this over time, how I take an unministerial pleasure in whenever my church does something better than anybody else's church. When we have more in attendance, when we raise more money in the annual pledge drive, family and friends have to frequently tell me to just back off and drop it. When I start making an ordinary activity into a race of some sort. This competitive streak caught fire in me when I heard about the prize egg. Nothing would stop me from finding it and winning that basket. The time came for the egg hunt, and my fellow students and I raced into the park to get to work. At first, I snatched up every egg I saw. Then I remembered my real purpose. The point was not to find eggs, the point was to find that prize egg. After a bit of hunting, my best friend came over and showed me her basket. Tucked down in the fake grass was that prize egg. My memory has a gap in it at this point. What I next recall is that now I had the egg and ran over to the teacher to show her. Everyone clapped, I was given the basket of treats, and we went back inside. But en route to the classroom, my mother pulled me aside. It seems she had witnessed what had happened and wanted to know how that prize egg went from my friend's basket into mine. I confessed that I had promised my friend some allowance money in exchange for the egg. My mother marched me over to the teacher, had me explain what I had done, and the prize basket went from my possession into my friend's hands. She seemed a bit puzzled, but happy. Not a promising beginning for someone who would be a minister one day. That anyone who swindled her best friend out of a prize egg should end up in a profession where ethical behavior is primary may be a bit of a miracle. I could just as easily have ended up a con artist. We've entered the annual time of miracles, this moment in the year when we're invited to recall and rejoice in the miracles central to 2 of the world's religions, Judaism and Christianity. The freeing of the Hebrew people from slavery in Egypt is marked in Passover and accomplished through a series of miraculous events. The resurrection of Jesus from death, a triumphant miracle, is marked in Christianity. And to add to the occasion, nature begins to add its own recurrent miracle of spring, just to get us in the right mood. And what exactly constitutes a miracle? Does something actually happen? Or is the miracle in the eyes of the beholder and how they interpret the event? Generally, miracles are remarkable, inexplicable, unearned events, sometimes characterized by an aura of mystery or the supernatural that break into our existence from time to time. They surprise us, shock us, shame us, uplift us, even anger us, and most of all, confound us. Unitarian Universalist churches generally do not talk much of miracles except to use the word in a poetic sense. Perhaps that is in part due to our uncertainty about a deity, and a deity tends to be a key element in a miracle often. Or it may be our preference for understanding ourselves as masters of our fate, capable of arranging and anticipating what comes our way, and that would mean that a miracle reflects a kind of loss of control. And we historically have loved rationality, and miracles do not align easily with a rational mindset. Once upon a time, life was seen as filled with miracles, and not just in the poetic sense of the word. All about wherever the eye fell, strange and wondrous and terrifying events were occurring. In our time, the miracle is the rare, seldom, if ever, seen event. Even those who follow a spiritual path where miracles are regarded as actual events rather than poetic descriptions of events will tell you that we've fallen away, that miracles do not come for us, that miracles which churches celebrate now are things of the past. When we do speak of miracles these days, we intend to mean only things that are remarkable or surprising, but not inexplicable, not supernatural, not contrary to the laws of nature and science. Among the Unitarian Universalist congregations I've known, I've not heard anyone lamenting the demise of miracles. Viewing life as filled with miracles seems to be the product of a very different worldview in which humans stand too small and weak and gods are given too great a power. We understand how things work. We usually explain events from a scientific point of view, and talk of miracles is mostly dismissed. But this is Easter Sunday, and Passover is underway, and you've probably figured out that I'm going to say the usual sorts of ministerly things about miracles and how we ought to be willing to see miracles more readily, and besides, who's going to discount miracles on Easter? But I like a both-and approach to spiritual questions, and so I want to opt for choosing both ways, having miracles, having a scientific worldview. I do believe that works. The garden is the only place there is, but you will not find it until you have looked for it everywhere and found nowhere that is not a desert. The miracle is the only thing that happens, but to you it will not be apparent until all events have been studied and nothing happens that you cannot explain. And life is the destiny you are bound to refuse until you have consented to die. These lines from W.H. Auden's poem, For the Time Being, describe the manner in which I, and perhaps many of you, move from one perspective, one way of being and doing and thinking, to another. I move only when I have to. Only when the old way is exhausted and no other possibilities present themselves will I make the necessary change, and then usually under protest. Many of us learn and grow the hard way. So Auden observes that certain wonderful experiences, a refreshing garden, a rich life, a miracle happen to us only when we welcome them, and we become welcoming, receptive to those experiences only when the familiar ways are exhausted. The miracle is the only thing that happens, but to you it will not be apparent until all events have been studied and nothing happens that you cannot explain. A twist on the usual argument, which would say that miracles are little more than echoes of a wishful mindset or the product of a limited worldview, in which most happenings seemed mysterious and inexplicable, and with the advent of the scientific method and psychological insight came the demise of miracles. Auden claims just the opposite, that miracles become possible only in an explicable, factually ordered world. Until all events have been studied and nothing happens that you cannot explain, until the irrational approach to self and world has been operative long enough to go through all its possibilities, no miracles appear. Miracles are a post-scientific, not a pre-scientific event. What would it have been like that morning when a group of people from the margins, peasants, fishermen, found themselves face to face with the biggest miracle of all, the miracle of life's victory over death, at a moment in their lives when all had been studied and everything explained? A crucifixion had occurred, a man had died and was buried, and along with him great hopes, and that was that. The various biblical accounts at this moment align with their descriptions of what Mary Magdalene and other assorted women mourners and disciples found when they went to the tomb. The story says they saw grave clothes lying like the shriveled, cracked shell of a cocoon left behind when a butterfly has emerged. And upon seeing that, they believed that a miracle had occurred. The Greek word used in this story, at this point in the story, for see, is not see as observe and note, but see as an inner perception, as understanding, as seeing widely enough to take in all aspects of an event. Having exhausted their usual worldview, it had died when Jesus died, these tired, dispirited people now saw with a new kind of seeing a miracle in those grave clothes that pointed to a triumph of life over death. The miracle is the only thing that happens. But to you it will not be apparent until all events have been studied, and nothing happens that you cannot explain. And just how does one explain the events of the story told us about that particular morning? If you were standing there, what would you conclude? A political maneuver? A joke? A miracle? What do you see? What those first individuals saw changed their lives dramatically and forever, transformed them from depressed, quarrelsome, limited people to leaders so emboldened by their vision that no amount of persecution or fear could stop them. What would you need to see? Not literally see, but with the kind of seeing this story points to, a seeing and understanding, what would you need to see for your experience to be so changed that whatever you believe you cannot do, whatever you're afraid to try, whatever you cannot say, whoever you cannot love, that all that would become possible You've studied and explained everything. What comes now? What do you see? I try to stay on the lookout for miracles, though I frequently forget to look in the course of a day. I'm hoping to see a miracle in the course of global events that would turn us from war to peace. I'm hoping to see a miracle in our country that would turn us from oppressive systems to systems that foster equity and compassion. I'm hoping for a miracle in my own heart, that I would worry less, love more, take risks. If Auden is to be believed, the miracle I'm watching for is always already present. What is missing is my capacity to see it. Until all events have been studied and nothing happens that we cannot explain, there will be no seeing for us beyond the literal facts, which in the story just discloses evidences of grave robbers, a hoax, wishful thinking by traumatized people. We will be surrounded in our justice efforts by forces that work for injustice and by individuals and groups who don't much care or are always self-seeking, because study all the events and explain them all, and that's what you get, the inevitable conclusion. But if you have explained and studied and cataloged and ordered and analyzed for a long time, too long, so that experiences begin to thwart attempts to make them fit. Those who are at this point may glimpse, briefly but emphatically, the remarkable, inexplicable, unexpected miracle of abiding life that is the heart of all transformative moments. A miracle that would make us people who change the world. And if we do find the ever-apparent miracle this year, no need to be alarmed. Rationality will not forever fly out the window. It stays. While we take our silver egg of a miracle and place it in the basket of our hearts, to be recalled and admired, to be hidden and hunted and found again whenever study and explanation have wearied us and our eyes so want to see more than what we already know. The miracle is the only thing that happens. So may we be the people who know the joy of a miracle this Easter time and beyond. Amen.